Okay, thank you, Gail, again, and thank you, Melissa. So it's that time in the agenda where we're going to sort of change gears a little bit. This is the point where we need your input for the next part of our session, a facilitated discussion that will inform the development of a national action plan on episodic disabilities. I'm going to hand the proceedings over now to my colleague, Melissa Egan, who realizes national lead on episodic disabilities. Melissa, over to you again.
Okay, thanks so much. I am really looking forward to hearing from you a little bit today. We have had an incredible number of people who have provided us with excellent information, told their stories, given us links to resources, and really just created a bit of a community and a dialogue around episodic disabilities and employment. What we need to do now, and what I'm really hoping to do just to start off with, is to get to know you a little bit better. So everybody should have access to the chat. My first question for you is, where are you from? What province are you visiting us from? What town are you from? Tell us a little bit about that. And if you'd like to add what one new skill is that you've learned this year, because whew, between March 2020 and March 2021, I have learned a lot, and I'm really interested in hearing if there's anything in particular that anybody else has learned that they'd like to share. Let's have a look at the chat for a minute, see how that's going. I've got an Ontario, I've got a Manitoba. I also have 130 people on this, so let's see if we can get a few more folks than two. Anyone else out there? Not yet, huh? Okay, feeling kind of quiet. Oh, I've got folks in the Q&A. Here we are, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Mississauga. Thanks, everyone. I now see that you need to talk to me in the Q&A rather than in the chat. Thank you. Where else are we? Sudbury, Vancouver. A couple of folks from Vancouver. Toronto, PEI. We've got a lot of the country covered. Anyone from up north? Halifax, Montreal, Raymond, Alberta. Nice. Okay. All right. This is excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got people from all over the country. I'm really, really happy to see that. I also have Elder Val here with us today, who is acknowledging that she lives, works, plays, and learns on the traditional ancestral unceded territories of the Coast Salish Nation, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh, and that's also known as Vancouver, BC. Thank you all so much for sharing. That's really great. It's nice to know who we are and how we're occupying this space together. So we truly, truly value your input during this discussion. It's so incredibly important that we have an opportunity to learn from the people that we're speaking to, because truly, this is your action plan. It's not ours. And what we're hoping is that in 5 years, what we'll all be able to tell the country is that we have achieved these things, right? I really am hoping that we can get a lot of interaction from you, and I'm sure I will have some folks helping me out to try and make sure that I see everything. If you would like to put your hand up as well, we're going to try and get folks to actually talk to us too. If that's something that you want to do, please feel free to do that. So my first question for the day is based on the presentations from the summit and from any of the days that you were able to attend. What was your main learning or discovery? Anybody want to get out there and answer that? How is it going in there? Lots of room for collaboration I've got. We really would like to acknowledge as well that these are responses that we're inviting everybody. We want to hear from everyone. And so employers as well as employees, we need to respect each other's positions and voices as we go through this conversation. So what else have we heard? The 4 limitations that were brought up in the first session, so those dynamics of disability, and that is acknowledging as being a really interesting topic. Somebody just says, I didn't realize I had an episodic disability. And that's something that those of us who've worked for Realize for a little while, we hear this a lot when we begin to discuss what an episodic disability is. We'll often hear from folks, oh my gosh, I have one of those, or my daughter has one of those, right? And it's great. Those who are asking the question, it's now up on the slide, which is based on the presentations that you have attended at the summit. What was your main learning or discovery? People are acknowledging that they have really come to learn about the barriers that are experienced by people with disabilities and the efforts that organizations are making. The disclosure guide has come up a couple of times, which is great. And that really people with episodic disabilities experience challenges. Trauma-informed workplaces, the disability passport, and really the uniqueness of all humans. That's been a big part of people's learnings as well. For me, I really found the distinction that Dr. Vera Roberts made on day 2 about how we can talk about accommodation, but really maybe we should reframe it a little bit and talk about inclusion, because when something is designed to be inclusive, then we don't need to make accommodations for folks. And I just really thought that was an excellent point. All right, let's move on to the second question here, which is, what was one thing that you would do? All right, if you could do anything, these are pie in the sky dreams. If you could do one thing to increase national awareness of episodic disability, what would you do? What's that one thing? Somebody said educate their management team. Awesome. That's great. If you'd like a workshop from me, get in touch. All right. Anybody else have any comments? Here we go. Making inclusivity training mandatory. That would be great. Ensure that the research and recommendations provided in this conference, are shared with all levels of government. Acknowledge more about episodic disabilities with staff while we're meeting each other. Really, it's okay to expect accommodations when you go back to work, right? And hopefully this summit has given you an awareness of that possibility for everyone. The invisibility of episodic disabilities and making it more visible, right? That's great. Somebody else said that they would like to increase awareness by promoting workplace disclosure as something positive. Employer education is key, working with small businesses to encourage the hiring of people with disabilities. Education and training. So it sounds like really what we're looking for out of this awareness building goal is access to training and education to really build up people's skills base and knowledge. Somebody else has said, we will likely see a restructuring of work as a result of COVID. So let's embed universal design that takes disability and episodic disability into account, which could be a critical opportunity to rebuild better or build back better, right? Thank you, Gail Fawcett. That was a contribution from Gail. Trauma-informed education for company owners. Don't wait for a COVID to be a flexible employer, to be a flexible place to work. Somebody else is saying that they'd like to continue to help their clients promote themselves and the strengths that they have to offer, even with an accommodation request. Absolutely. All right, thanks, folks. Let's have a look at question number 3. Jacob, are you out there? Thank you. All right, so how have the realities of working during COVID-19 increased understanding of episodic disability, whether it's your own or the workplace or kind of employment in general? What's happened that's really increased an understanding of episodic disability this year? All right. It sounds like people are saying that accommodations that we've been historically refused are now being adopted in many workplaces due to COVID. Absolutely. I think a lot of people have been talking about this lately. That more conversations are happening about accommodation and working from home, and that staff have shared that they experience more flexibility and capacity to complete their work. More conversations are happening. The stigma has been there ever since, but it took COVID-19 to be aware of this, right? So these kinds of shifts and this difference in the way that we've had to work is part of our COVID experience, but something I think many of us are hoping kind of pulls into the next year or so and how we begin to talk about work and what accommodations look like for people. Any other comments out there? Leaders begin to understand that they need to learn how to manage performance without having people in the office. That's right. Yeah. I've often wondered why me sitting in a chair means that I'm working rather than actually doing the work, right? So that's something that I've encountered in the past as well. Lots of new types of work have been defined as a result of COVID. For example, call centers being operated out of somebody's home. There's also been an increase in dialogue and awareness of the vulnerabilities that people are living with disabilities face. People with episodic disabilities and other disabilities are facing. Somebody's brought up this very important point is that there is a real importance of the in-person connectedness and connections in the workplace. And lots of folks are dealing with isolation and the impact of what it's been like to be at home alone for a year. It's definitely not been easy. Some people have said that their employers, in fact, didn't increase their understanding, and lots of employees were able to work from home, but that accommodation didn't last as people had to return to work and things reopened. Um, Also, employers have come to realize that accommodations are possible regardless of disability status. Creativity about perhaps problem solving and work is better received. Um, and the changing of the rules changed the power map. And I think that's a really interesting point that we began to see power dynamics shift ever so slightly. And that has been such an interesting byproduct of what we've experienced in the last little while, as well as a recognition of need for the attention and action required to address inequities. Excellent points, folks. Thanks so much. How about we turn to that fourth question and see what's out there? Who's missing? All right, who is missing from this conversation? I realize we really try to be as broadly inclusive within our work and the conversations that we have as possible. We know that people with disabilities are represented throughout community, in the 2S LGBTQ plus community, in Black and Indigenous communities, in newcomer communities. We know people with disabilities are everywhere. So how do we ensure that we've got lots of representation from all over? Okay, what have we got here? Anybody like to comment on that? All right. Who's missing? Young, physically disabled queer women of color. Okay. Government leaders, the Workers' Compensation Board, and the C-suite. If people don't know what that is, these are folks in that high level of companies, usually corporations. So the CEO, the CFO, the COO, those kinds of things. So chief officers of certain positions. Who else? People working in employment standards, landed immigrants, care providers, human rights officers, places like the Workers' Safety Insurance Board, teams around equity, diversity, and inclusion who have roles in government policy, HR professional organizations, long-term disability insurance providers like Sun Life. There's been a lot of really excellent suggestions here. Thank you, everyone. All right, anything else here? Folks working in the trades, they have huge challenges with accommodations, and perhaps there are folks from that particular industry who are missing from this conversation today. This is going to be incredibly helpful for us as we begin to develop this action plan to make sure that we're reaching out to as many environments as possible. And you may have suggestions and thoughts about these places that we don't have or we perhaps didn't think of. So thank you very much for that. And last question, please, Jacob. What will you do?
Melissa,
What? Go ahead.
We have a hand up in the participants.
Excellent.
Lucy
I can't
D'Souza?
see that at all.
Okay, so Lucy, I'm going to allow you to talk. No.
Lucy, you will need to unmute yourself now. Lucy?
Oh,
Perhaps you could carry on, Melissa, and Lucy will jump in when she can.
Yes, Lucy, if at any point you become unmuted, just interrupt me, okay? All right, the last question is, what action are you going to take with what you've learned either from this session or from a particular session or from the whole summit? What will you do? Let's have a look at these. Somebody has asked to be able to participate or join in our planning or benchmarking for this particular thing. Thank you for that volunteering. I am sure there will be an opportunity for us to be in touch at some point soon. The discussion has been started about disabilities and barriers to employment, but that we still have a long way to go. Yeah. Somebody has said that they will be sharing information and data on their social media channels. Thank you for that. That's a really excellent way for us to reach a wide range of people. The information from this session will help in the ongoing development of my employer internal accommodation and disability management program. Excellent. I'm very glad to hear that. Somebody has let us know that they will be using much of the vocabulary they learned over the last few days. They've practiced with friends in various areas of challenge that they were unfamiliar with terms that were new, but have really appreciated new ways to look at their abilities. That's excellent. I'm really glad to hear that. Somebody has said that they will work with their OPSEU Disability Caucus to do a debrief and see how they can build resolutions for their members and the communities that they live on. Someone said that they will be developing an action plan themselves to influence income security and workforce participation for people living with episodic disabilities in their province. Excellent. Thanks, Michelle. I'm really looking forward to that work too. All right. What else? Someone says, I'm a union rep for a group of members in the educational sector, and their portfolio is health promotion and wellness. And there'll be more understanding now when, I've lost it. That's gone. All right. I'm afraid I've lost your question, but it sounded like you will be more understanding when people come to you or the folks on your team with accommodation requests. Somebody said that they've already shared the Realize website with management and coworkers. This is really an excellent way forward. Thank you so much, everyone. So what we're going to be doing is pulling all of this information together and really try and launch the National Action Plan on Episodic Disabilities and Employment in 1 year at the 2022 National Episodic Disabilities and Employment Summit. I am so hopeful that we'll all be able to be here again next year, and that we'll be able to show you what we've done for the last year to develop this action plan. Thank you so much for your input and for your support of this summit. You can find me, or as I said yesterday, connect with me at Melissa E. All right. My email address is melissae@realizecanada.org. Connect with me anytime. I'd love to speak with you. I'd love to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I got caught up reading some of the questions, some amazing questions there. So thank you everyone for the excellent discussion. We've almost reached the end of our summit agenda today. Thank you again to all of our presenters. It's been an incredibly rich journey. I hope you agree, but we'll never know unless you'll fill out the evaluation surveys. So this is me reminding you once again to fill them out. The link is in the chat window. Remember, you could win a $50 Indigo card. Before I hand it over to Tammy, I just want to say that it's been a great privilege and honor for me to be your moderator for these summit sessions, and I hope that our learnings this week energize the National Action Plan. Now over to you, Tammy.